stick with him, you have to get to a place of emotional connection. Love for him like a brother. Love for him like a friend, like a king. Getting beyond this emotional barrier. Read a little further and you see what Peter says in response to Jesus. Jesus in verse 60, on verse 67 says, "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Jesus asked the 12. Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We believe and know that you're the Holy One of God." Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We believe and know that you're the Holy One of God. Is Peter profound? Is he amazing? Is he wonderful that he understands Jesus has the words of life? No. Peter has just spent enough time actually listening to Jesus, because the part we skipped over real briefly. Read it now. Beginning verse 60. On hearing it, many of his disciples said, "This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it?" Aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, "Does this offend you? What if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before? The Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. The words I've spoken to you are spirit, and they are life. Yet there are some of you who do not believe. The words I've spoken to you are spirit and they are life." Peter was just paying attention. He just heard Jesus a couple seconds before say, "My words to you are life." And so here it is. Jesus says, "My words are spirit and they're life." And Peter says, "Well, I'll go with that. I'll go with that. You have the words of life. I'm going to stick with you. I'm just going to hang out," because he has spent enough time with Jesus. He has heard Jesus' words just enough that he understands Jesus' words are life. When I first met Jen, we developed an email relationship with each other. And when I first met her, my first question to her was, "Can I have your email address?" Not, "Can I have your phone number?" because that was too prosaic and ancient. I went, "Can I have your email address?" And we began an email conversation. And she thinks I'm an absolute lunatic for many reasons, but one of the reasons my wife thinks I'm a lunatic is that I have saved every bit of that correspondence that I could. And someone right there is laughing because he must have done the same thing. But here it is, the first email, not the very first one we exchanged, because at that time I was on Prodigy, which just stinks, and I never was able to get them out of it. But the first email that I ever received from my now wife that I still have is this one. "Hi Jeff. Hey Jeff, how are you doing today? Looks like you were up practically all night. How much espresso did you end up drinking?" Little smiley face. "Well, I probably ought to go for now. Have a wonderful day, me." That was in July of '95. And I read those words and I was just like, and then they gave me life. Yeah. And then I got another one here, just because I like to do this kind of stuff. And I asked her permission to do this, by the way. And she says, "Hey there, Jeff, this has to be short, but I had a most wonderful time on Saturday. You're so very smart and sweet and cute and all the rest. I love you." And so I thought, that just gave me life. Last night she told me, "You really should start throwing things away." But it gave me life. And I thought, words have the power to give life. And when I got back to school, she was going to Purdue, I was going to Wheaton up in Chicago, and I gave her my password, and she hacked into my computer while I was from Purdue, because she's a computer engineer, she knows how to do that stuff. So she hacked into my computer once, and the next time I logged onto my computer, it said, "Good morning, Jeff, how are you doing today?" And then late at night, when I logged into my computer, it would say, "It's awfully late, shouldn't you be getting into bed?" And I was like, where'd this stuff come from? And so she had done a little surprise thing. In fact, the file was called Surprise. And I just thought that was cool. That was awesome, just absolutely incredible. And even to this day, her words still give me life. Just this last week, she sent me this email. She says, "I was sitting here at work where they're keeping it très froid." Très froid means really cold in French. 65 to 67, but that's just outside the server room door. It's pretty clear that in our rooms with all of the huge windows, it's much colder. So I've got on my outfit that I left for work in, and a sweater I added on here, and a blanket that I brought in, feeling rather like an old lady. And I don't know about you, but when I read those words, I saw the très froid thing, and I know my wife kind of is Frenchish, and she likes that kind of stuff, and I just smiled and laughed. I was like, that's so cool. And it just gives me life. But there was a time when she said something I wasn't expecting and maybe didn't want to hear at the time, where it gave me life. And I was really down, really depressed. And I was struggling with a particular issue, and I was on my way to a meeting, and I was really bummed out about this meeting and what it was going to be. And right before I left, she came up to me and she said, "Jeff, just remember, it's not about you." Because ultimately, my life isn't really about me, it's about God and what glory He gets as a result of me and as a result of the meetings and the things that I do. And that was a word that I didn't expect and wasn't necessarily a feel-good word, but it gave me life. And friends, I want to tell you that if you don't receive life when you read the words of Jesus and hear the words of Jesus, you need to spend more time with the words of Jesus. And if you want to get past the emotional barrier, you have to get to the place where His words give you life. Fall in love with Him as a brother, companion, friend, king, and hear His words and let them give you life. And here's the final one. The last barrier comes in a verse here where Jesus says something that absolutely just kind of transforms everything else. In verse 64, "Yet there are some of you who do not believe, for Jesus had known from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray Him. He went on to say, 'This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled him.'" No one can come to me unless the Father has enabled him. It's impossible to come to me unless the Father enables him, enables that person. Jesus Himself says, you can't come to me. Unless God works in your heart already, you can't come to me. Unless God gives you the power to see who I am and believe in me, you can't come to me. Jesus is saying something amazingly exclusive, and it goes like this. He is saying that for each of us, there is a barrier of trust that we need to get past, and that barrier is a spiritual barrier that God must remove first. The Father in heaven has to remove this spiritual barrier from us, and so the level 3 trust barrier is that spiritual. It is a barrier that is inside us somehow. Perhaps your intellect isn't satisfied. Perhaps your heart isn't in love with Jesus in some way. And maybe it's because this spiritual barrier is still in place. You know, Jesus says, you can't come to me unless the Father draws you. I talk to a lot of people who I'm trying to explain the things about Jesus, and it's like they just don't get it or they don't want to believe or something. And when I talk to those people, I have often wanted to say these words. Well, I get it now. Yeah, God's not working in you.